Hey, Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that. You can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today, we're going to discuss the Eagles' wide receiver dilemma, the offensive line shuffle, and preview the Week 6 matchup against the Ravens. Chris, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. It's going to be interesting to see how they do against this tough Ravens team. But I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has this one chalked up as a loss, especially after how the defense performed against the Steelers. But I don't know. I got a weird feeling about this one. This just kind of feels like somebody brought this up to me. I was speaking to, I forgot who I was talking to about it, but they were like, this feels like the Packers game from last year, where it's like, it seems like an inevitable loss. And then they pull it out with a surprise offensive game plan the defense somewhat holds against a really talented quarterback. So, I'm not the only one who thinks that way. I'm going to take it optimistic this week. Um, so, as we get into this thing, I wanted to talk about something that I think is going to be a very big talking point, not this week, but maybe next week or the week after. I'm somebody who likes to think 3 steps ahead, so this is an appropriate topic for us. So the Eagles right now have 7 active wide receivers on their roster. They have another one who is going to be eligible to return after week 7 in Jalen Reagor, their first round pick. Now, those wide receivers are DeSean Jackson, Alshon Jeffery, Travis Fulgam, John Hightower, Quez Watkins, Greg Ward, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and then obviously Jalen Reagor would be that 8th guy. But we've seen Fulgam emerge. We see John Hightower playing some pretty heavy snaps. They don't seem to be willing to give up on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Everybody's probably pretty okay with what Greg Ward's brought to the table. And then Quez Watkins, they just brought back from IR. So, Chris, what I'm going to do is ask you a couple of questions about the wide receiver group. I'm gonna play host, and you're going to give me the most. You know what I mean?
All right, I'm ready.
So when Alshon Jeffery and DeSean Jackson inevitably return from injury, who are the 5 guys you have active on game day? This is prior to Jalen Reagor being taken off IR.
Okay, I'm as much as it may sound like a lot of people will want to see it. I'm still suiting up DeSean Jackson and Alshon Jeffery because I think Jackson, he still can be your speed threat, and I think Jeffery is your experienced possession wide receiver. I'm still having Greg Ward because he can go ahead and he's proven that he can go ahead and be a good slot receiver in the NFL, and I think he can go ahead and do well in the middle of the field, and Carson Wentz has a lot of confidence in him. The other 2 I'm gonna go. I'm gonna use a cop out on this one. Depending on Fulgam, if he can go ahead and continue to have a strong showing, I'm using him to be my quote unquote my other X receiver, my backup X receiver. And then from there, I'm gonna go with Hightower. I think he's warranted enough. I think he's shown enough flashes to go ahead and be the continued development and go ahead and work in there. I know it's tough between him and Quez Watkins, but I think that Hightower with his athletic ability, I think when it comes to speed, and also I think he's learned more and felt a little more comfortable to go ahead and put in that position because you still have Watkins who we haven't seen him in a big play spot so far. So that's who I'm going to go with. And now, since I'm going to go ahead and co-opt the host section now, Mike, who do you feel should be the 5 that suits up?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I don't really care what Travis Fulgam does next week against the Ravens. I don't. I genuinely don't. I think he needs to be playing regardless. I've seen enough. Look, I was sitting in the press box, almost laughing at the fact that Travis Fulgam was getting open on Joe Hayden. almost every play. This team has lacked wide receiver developmental pieces with somewhat flashes for 5 years. They just have. Everybody wants to talk about Greg Ward. Look, I think Greg Ward's done a fine job. He's also never averaged more than 10 yards a catch. I just like, and that's not what a slot receiver necessarily has to do, but he's really not a big play threat. He won't get you a lot of yards after the catch unless he breaks open on a busted coverage. That said, I do think Greg Ward should be active. I do think DeSean Jackson and Alshon Jeffery should both be active as well. I don't know if I necessarily need one of them to start. You had video of Alshon at practice yesterday. Unfortunately, I had to miss it because I had a sick kid, but Alshon looked like he had glue stuck to his shoes. And that would be the concern for me. Now, I think he can be good in the red zone. I'd make him a package player. But frankly, they're in a spot right now at 1-3-1 where, yes, the division's wide open, but you also kind of have to balance the future with the present because there's literally no way that Alshon Jeffery and DeSean Jackson are here next year. There is no way. And people get upset with literally, there is no way. I would bet pretty much almost anything on it.
Okay, so Vegas puts plus 100, plus 200 that one of the two stays. You say you're not going to take that at all?
I would take DeSean over Jeffery, but there's no way that Jeffery is here. There's no way. Sorry, there's just no way. And so I think you've got to put him in. Look, you're paying him. I think DeSean, like you said, can still be a speed threat. I have no issue starting him opposite Fulgam and Greg Ward. That does not bother me. I'm not starting Alshon Jeffery. He's shown me nothing. He hasn't played since December, and he's shown me nothing in practice that would make me feel okay with that. Sorry. So that's your prolonged answer to 4. 5, yeah, I agree with you. I'm probably going to go with Hightower, although I don't necessarily think it's a slam dunk. I mean, he has really shown a problem with tracking the ball. And, we'll get into when Rager comes back, but they're going to have to make a decision between 3 guys on this roster as to who they're going to cut, because you're not going to keep 8 wide receivers on the roster. It's just not going to happen. It's terrible roster management. 2, you've seen that injuries pile up every week. It's going to be very difficult to do that. I think they actually screwed themselves by activating Quez Watkins' practice window as early as they did. Not because Fulgam emerged, but also because you're doing that as Alshon Jeffery and DeSean Jackson are coming back into the mix. It would be one thing if Alshon was on PUP, but they again made a poor decision there and kept him on the main roster. So now they've got to juggle all of these things. And we saw it with Casey Toohill where he was waived and claimed by Washington. Do you want to take that same risk with a Quez Watkins or a John Hightower? I don't think you do. I also don't think you're going to give up on a JJ Arcega-Whiteside less than 2 years after making him a second round pick. I may be wrong. So let me turn this to you. I want to get this, obviously this opening segment is going to take up a lot of time because there's a lot of guys at stake. And frankly, the wide receiver position is one of the few interesting spots on the team right now. Who are you cutting of those 3 guys once Jalen Reagor returns? Or are you cutting Fulgam and are basically going to get hate mail for the next 6 months?
Oh, no. He's going to take a lot of heat if he did this. But frankly, I think it's time. I think he cut Whiteside. I think Arcega-Whiteside's time here in Philadelphia is done. I wouldn't be surprised if in the offseason he's done. I mean, the fact that you had to wait this long, you had to wait 5 games for him to even get his first reception in this year. It was granted it was a nice catch, but they ran out of time. They couldn't basically use it, which goes back to Hightower, which was a rookie mistake. But when you look at what he's provided so far, he hasn't gotten even enough separation for Wentz to even look his way. He's done the only thing that I've seen that I've liked out of him so far this season has been his blocking down the field. And there's so many times you can get a tight end to do that, or you can go ahead and go, hey, you're a wide receiver. You're supposed to be blocking as part of your job description, but hey, you know what? Your main thing is receiver. And he hasn't been able to do that. I mean, the front office would get so much blowback from it, especially with it being with Arcega-Whiteside being a second round pick. But it's just time. You're not getting the production. You're not getting anything. And I'd rather basically Travis Fulgham is what JJ Arcega-Whiteside should have been.
Yes,
He should have been that possession receiver with that catch. I mean, how many times we heard catch radius, big body, getting out there? He should have been the one that does that. Now, are you cutting Arcega-Whiteside? I mean, I don't see how he would not be the. I don't see how he's not the question. He's not the answer to this one.
Well, so I disagree with you. I don't think they're going to get a ton of flack. I actually think they might get some praise for acknowledging that he was not it, and not like sticking to their guns on a draft pick over cutting somebody like Travis Fulgham. But yeah, I was saying this to Jimmy Kemsky, our buddy from the Philly Voice, the other day. I was like, this is exactly what they wanted in JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Like, from a pure definition of what they saw in him, exactly what they got. I actually compared Travis Fulgham the other night to Tyler Boyd. They run similar 40s. They can play all three wide receiver positions, very good in the slot, can beat you deep, can beat you on a possession catch, seemingly have very good field awareness. So I agree with you that they're not going to cut Fulgham. So here's the thing. You have a thing for Quez Watkins, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I think you can cut Quez Watkins. I think you can get him through waivers. The guy who lasted till late in the 6th round, he has no training camp tape on him. He's not a pass rusher. The reason why Casey Tuhill got picked up is he's a pass rusher. And if you have the opportunity to grab a young pass rusher, especially in a Ron Rivera defense, you're going to do it. I think Quez Watkins is a guy you can get through waivers. That said, if they were to cut JJ, I would be on board with it. I just think you've put this young man in a position he was not comfortable with. I don't think he's good enough. And frankly, you brought in Hakeem Butler to convert to tight end when really maybe you should have been thinking about using JJ Arcega-Whiteside as a move tight end, a Jordan Reed type player. And they look, I mean, I just don't understand why this guy's on the field, frankly. I don't know how he has not been inactive almost every week. Again, I think you've put yourself in this position where Quez Watkins is a guy who can offer deep speed threat, but we've seen John Hightower can get down the field and Carson just can't connect with him. DeSean Jackson's coming back. Jalen Reagor's coming back. You're getting more of the same here. And so I think, from my perspective, if you can get Quez Watkins through waiver, look, I think they're going to get heat for cutting Quez Watkins. They got heat for cutting Casey Tuhill when nobody had actually seen him play other than us. So no matter what you do, I think, but that said, I think Howie Roseman gets this reputation of guarding draft picks and holding on to them for too long. I think if he were to move on from somebody like JJ Arcega-Whiteside, you'd have to praise him. He's going to get, I was talking to Doug Whaley, who's a former general manager of the Buffalo Bills the other day. I was like, you guys have a job where no matter what you do, you're going to get criticized. You guys could draft Dan Marino, Jerry Rice, and Emmitt Smith in the same draft. You're still going to be criticized for the kicker you signed who has no experience. It's just one of those things where I think, look, Howie has not done a good job with this roster this year. It's evident. I don't think he did a terrific job with the roster last year either. But I do think he deserves credit where credit's due. He didn't just sign Fulgham off the street. He claimed him off waivers. They clearly liked him. And they were able to get him through waivers and then bring him up. And that typically doesn't happen. They decided to sign him to the active roster over Deontay Burnett, who we had all seen have a great camp and do all this other stuff. There was some logic there. So here's what I'm then what I'm going to ask you. The last question is, once Reagor returns, how do you see the roles playing out? Do you see DeSean as a starter? Do you see Alshon as a starter? Do you see Fulgham as a starter? Do you see maybe Greg Ward moving out of the slot? Do you see Reagor maybe starting there? What's your lineup for the 5?
I think in order to, and I don't think it'll be right, but I think in order to appease all parties involved, I think they're going to go back to what they envisioned to have opening day. or at least some semblance of what they would like to have opening day. I think you have DeSean Jackson starting opposite of Alshon Jeffery. And I think personally, I think Alshon's about 2 weeks away. That's just me looking at him when seeing him running, and I think he was working more on his form and getting time down and everything. His form, but he did a little kind of slow. But I think he was working more on form with that. But I think when he eventually comes back in 2 weeks, I think you're going to have those two, just because they're veterans. And the last thing you want to do is last thing this team needs to do is seeing veterans being a little upset and setting a precedent for rookies and impressionable rookies. I think that's the last thing the team wants to do. And I think they also want to respect the veterans. So I'm not saying it's right, but I think you'll see those two there. I think you see Ward remain in that middle of the field, especially especially with Goddard out. We don't know how long he's going to return, but that should be coming very soon. But I think you still put Ward in the middle, and I think you put Rager down as the other slot guy. So when you go 4 wide, you have those 4 going out there. You have Jackson, Jeffery, Ward, and Rager, and then you mix in a little bit. You mix in Fulgam to go ahead with Jeffery. You start to mix them in a little bit. You shift them around. So that's the way I think the lineup's going to be. Now, how are you going to keep? Are you going to go ahead and put Jackson and keep him starting there, and are you going to keep Jeffery? Are you going to have that starting combo of Jeffery and Jackson to start out the season? To start out probably after the bye. Are you going to do that?
Well, I'm easing Jeffery into the lineup regardless, whether he's starting or not. Like, he's probably going to get 15 snaps a game. And so I want to see how he and Fulgam play during that. I want them to compete. I'm big on Fulgam. I'm telling you, I've been covering the league for 6 years. I don't think I've seen a come out of nowhere performance quite like Travis Fulgham's. I've definitely not seen a wide receiver performance like Fulgham's since I've been here. Remember, I covered Allen Robinson, who I think is eons better than Alshon Jeffery. So I've seen performances like that. No, Allen Robinson is the most underrated route runner I've ever seen in my life. I used to watch him just absolutely wreck Jalen Ramsey in practice, like wreck him, like to the point where Jalen would like whine on the sideline. I have video of it. I will send it to you.
I wouldn't say light years. I mean, I think he's better. I wouldn't say light years, though. I think
at this point in their careers,
he's good.
At this point in their careers, Alshon's had like 2,000-yard seasons and 1 Pro Bowl season. Like, I don't think I think Alshon was very good for what the Super Bowl year, he surprised me. I didn't think they should have signed him. But the Super Bowl year, I thought he played extremely well. He was a huge part of that team. Since then, since I've been on this beat, he's been basically a number 3 wide receiver for the most part. I don't think he's the guy that he was prior to his labrum injury. I think the labrum injury really affected him, and then he's dealt with some lower body injuries. I just think his body's breaking down, as big wide receivers seem to do now more a days. Look, I think DeSean Jackson's a guy that you brought in here to be, a sweet dessert. You brought him back this year to be a sweet dessert because you've got Jalen Reagor, who's the main course. You have to see what you have in these guys. Like, I just, like, they've lacked so much definition when it comes to developmental players, especially at the wide receiver position. If you've invested a first-round pick in Jalen Reagor, he needs to be on the field. So maybe that means you play him in the slot opposite DeSean and the tandem of Fulgam and Jeffery, depending on matchup. Like, to me, that makes sense. I don't need to see Greg Ward on. I think Greg Ward's a very good 4th wide receiver, but you do not need to force feed him at this point. Really, you need to see a return on your investment immediately with Reagor. You need to see a return on your investment with DeSean Jackson. You want to see what you have left in Alshon Jeffery. And then Travis Fulgam has already had maybe one of the top 15 performances in the regular season for a wide receiver from a number standpoint. The last time somebody caught 10 passes for 152 yards and a touchdown, it was 2014. Carson Wentz wasn't even in the league yet, and it was Jeremy Maclin. So to me, I know we're talking a lot about Travis Fulgam, but really he's been like one of the few bright spots on this team, and they're going to eventually have to make a huge decision. And we've taken up 20 minutes of this show talking about the wide receiver position because I do think it's that enigmatic heading into when they have these 3 major names return to the lineup.
Why is the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed your answer to better health and wellness? It's proven quality sleep. Any more questions?
Yes, I'm always freezing, and he overheats.
It's temperature balancing, so you can sleep better together.
But can it help keep us asleep?
It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you effortlessly comfortable.
So I'll have more energy for yoga.
Yes, proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep.
Namaste.
Namaste to you, too. And now, save up to $1,000 on the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed and adjustable base, only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
So let's go into the offensive line right now. And we'll make this segment quick before we get into our preview. This is going to be a little bit longer of a show, obviously, because it was wide receiver talk. Look, Lane Johnson might not be able to play on Sunday. And so that means that Jason Kelce will be the lone starter, traditional starter on this team. And Jack Driscoll will play right tackle. What have you thought of the makeshift offensive line thus far? What have you thought of Jordan Mailata?
I wish they had. I know Pro Football Writers have a award for assistant coaches, not just coordinators. But I wish there was a NFL recognition for one, because I think if they continue to do well, I think Jeff Stoutland should be in consideration for it. The fact that you have taken if you just look at the line right now as it is, you have Jason Kelce. Okay, he's not. I don't think he's still playing at a high level, but he's not the level he was, say, 3-4 years ago. But if you meant to tell me you would have a rookie playing right tackle, you would have Matt Pryor, no explanation needed with that one. Even though I thought he would do okay, but he's been just bad. He's holding in there. He's probably been the worst of the five. Then you go on to the left of Kelce. You have Nate Herbig, who went from playing right guard to left guard and has played at a decent level. And then you have a 6'8" former rugby player who's adjusted to have another decent time to play left tackle for your Hall of Fame left tackle who's still hurt, who hasn't been consistently on the field. You mean to tell me that they would go ahead and actually come together and play decently and do an okay job to protect your franchise quarterback? You can't say enough about that. And I think Driscoll is going at. I think Driscoll's part of that thing. I think the offensive line has been a good job, and I think if they can withstand the Steelers, I think they can have a good chance to go withstand the Ravens. It's going to be tougher, but it's going to be, and I think the biggest test is going to be how they handle these exotic blitzes and these stunts. But I have to say the offensive line right now, I don't think that's the worst part of this team right now. You can't say that, in my opinion. I mean, are you going to go ahead and keep, and I'll say this too, when Johnson's in there, would you move Driscoll over to the right guard position to go ahead and cover up for Pryor, or would you just keep Pryor in there or wait for Jamon Brown?
I mean, I just think I don't know what's taking so long for Jamon Brown to kind of get on the field. I mean, look, guard's not an easy position to play in this offense, but they just brought up Jason Kroom after a week of being on the practice squad to play tight end, which is also not an easy task. So, my question is, look, again, I like seeing Jack Driscoll out there. I like seeing, Herbig out there. You want to see what you have in these guys, but I think I'm over Jason Peters. I just don't really see what the point is at this point. What's your thought?
Well, I think when it comes to Peters,
you do this thing where you are very big on veteran players, and I understand that in a normal situation, but this team isn't good. If they get to the playoffs, they can't contend. I'm not really sure what they're in between they're in between a door frame right now. So they have one foot headed towards a massive, and when I say massive rebuild, this is going to be a rebuild of epic proportions.
Oh, it will. It will. But
right.
My thing is when you see
but then they also have an NFC East wide open. But here's the thing. Jason Peters isn't playing well. Alshon Jeffery hasn't played since December. DeSean Jackson has played 6 games in the last 2 years. I understand the logic of if they're in their prime, hey, you know what? Add them to the bunch. They make the team better. I don't know if they make the team better. That's my point to you.
But my thing is going to be when you look at some of the better teams in the league, they have that good mix of both veteran players and young players. And I think right now when you go ahead, Mailata's played decently. But I think the best thing is going to be is Peters is going to be the best part to have at that point when he returns. A healthy Jason Peters, I think, which it sounds like oxymoron at times, but I think a healthy Jason Peters, even at this point of his league, is about the same as having still a little bit better than having a Jordan Mailata at his point of his career. Right now, don't get me wrong. I'd actually bring Mailata back next year and I'd have him compete for that left tackle spot against Andre Dillard. And I think, and from judging for what I've seen so far, I definitely think Dillard would be the backup in that case. I think Mailata would beat out Dillard, and that goes back to another selection of.
But then why even bother bringing Jason Peters back as a left tackle? That's what I'm saying. Like,
hey, as long as they're in contention, man, I think you got to go ahead and as long as they're in contention for this division, you got to put your best players out there, and that's the best way to do it.
But what about Jason Peters that you saw in the first 3 games of the season makes you think that he is a substantially better option at this point? That's my question to you. Is like,
knowledge is everything. And I think when you go ahead, you see these exotic, you're going to have, if he was ready today, I'd put him in there left tackle right now. Because when you have these weird exotic looking blitzes, everything I feel more comfortable with him going ahead and knowing to pick it up or helping the person to the right of him to go ahead and pick up and help Herbig and basically helping out with that instead of having Mailata. I mean, you can coach up somebody, a coach can do so much, and I think Stoutland's done a good job, but when you're out there, you have live bullets flying around your head, you're looking around like, okay, I got to go figure out a way to go ahead and have this happen. What's this guy? Wait, are these 2 or 3 guys coming this way? And then all of a sudden they drop everybody back or they bring an extra guy. I think Peters is more equipped to go ahead and handle that. And oh, by the way, you have a $100 million quarterback right now in the back where you got to think of as well too. So I think I'd rather have him out there protect them than going ahead and having Mailata out there full time. But and especially with the way this division is right now. I mean, the Dak injury hurt everybody. The Dak injury changed everything. It hurt.
Right, but I think that's what the problem is here. Is there's like the old Looney Tunes cartoons. A guy would be on the treadmill and there'd be a stake in front of him, or like like the Tasmanian devil would have a stake in front of him on a stick.
Dude, like I'm starving right now. All these food references.
Me
and
too. I heard your stomach rumbling earlier. But like, here's the thing. Like, here's where I'm at with that. The Dak injury was actually bad for the Eagles because right now it keeps them in a roster. Like, the GM's job is to worry about the present and the future. The head coach's job is to coach the present, but develop for the future. And the issue here is, if you keep thinking that stake's in front of you, let's say they get to 6-9-1, okay? And they make the playoffs. Then they get just smacked by the Saints or the Seahawks. Was it worth all of that development that you've got a paper division title? Look, I'm always all for winning. Last year, a lot of the fan base was just like, you know what? Just pack it in, get a better draft pick. No, you can contend, and they went 9-7, but a 6-9 or a 7 or a 6-9-1 or a 7-8-1 division win, is that really a division win to you? This is gonna be a forgotten season most likely. And I think what you have to do is you have to see what young pieces fit and what don't. You have to see, that's what they're doing on the offensive line, essentially. Instead of, signing Cordy Glenn, they decided to put out an Australian guy who'd never played a snap in his life. Like, that's just what you have to do here. And it kind of seems like they're in this tug of war of like, what should we do at each position? And nothing's consistent. You're putting Marcus Epps out there to get beat like a drum every week, but you don't want to give Kayvon Wallace a bigger role, or you've got Jalen Mills at corner, but maybe Craig James can develop into a better player because Jalen Mills isn't playing very well. At linebacker, you've got Duke Riley out there and Nate Gary. I'm not sure you can play worse than either one of those guys. And you've got a guy in Sean Bradley who I think is an absolute dog. I think he's got a great mindset for the game. He's extremely athletic. He's very smart. Why not take a flyer? I get it. Davian Taylor shouldn't even be lacing up his shoes outside of special teams. But, like, at some point, you got to play the kids. And so you've invested all this money in the defensive line. Good. Those veterans are actually delivering. But if you're not going to, if you have positions that aren't playing well, play the kids. That's my point. Anyway, so that's a good segment into previewing this Ravens game. Look, this game is not pretty on paper. The Ravens can kill you in a lot of ways. Hollywood Brown is developing into a very good wide receiver. Their running game is terrific with J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram. Their defense is phenomenal. They're forcing turnovers on the regular. Marcus Peters is very good. Marlon Humphrey is very good at corner. this is not an easy matchup for this wide receiver group or for Carson Wentz. What did you see on film, Chris? Take us through it.
It was, when you look at last week's game, I think when you see the final score versus what actually happened, it was a lot of fool's gold. I think Lamar Jackson, that ankle definitely it was bothering him. It was apparent he wasn't really truly stepping into throws, and when he was, it was sailing every which way, left, right. But when he actually was accurate, he sat and pretty much had a lot of time to go ahead if he was okay. He wasn't running like Lamar Jackson of old. Now we've heard Javon Hargrave and Nickel Roby-Coleman yesterday said that he's starting to evolve even more. He's staying in the pocket a little bit more. I think last week that was more of a product of his injury. I think he stayed in the pocket more to protect himself. But when you look at what this Ravens offense provides, I mean, Mark Ingram, he's not the Ingram of the Saints lore, but he's actually still pretty much provides a lot of decent production still when it comes to there. I think J.K. Dobbins, I think that's another guy who may give the Eagles fits, especially when he comes out the backfield, and you may see Nate Gary have to go ahead and try to cover or swing around, try to get to him, or if Duke Riley's good to go, I think you may see that matchup, which kind of scares me a little bit too. But the Ravens still have a lot of pieces on offense that would be good. I mean, what matchup on defense kind of scares you, or do you see the Ravens offense providing that scares you for the Eagles defense?
Well, I think Marcus Peters versus Travis Fulgham, I think you're going to find out whether Travis Fulgham is ready to go and can really anchor. Look, that's the interesting thing here, right? Is these young players kind of stepping up while these other guys are out. Now, if DeSean Jackson can play and he can take away Humphrey and some safety coverage, maybe you get some one-on-one matchups and you see Fulgham get open. But this is a really difficult assignment for everybody. I think their safety play is very good. Their linebackers can all do basically everything. This team drafts well. And then you look at the interior offensive line versus guys like Calais Campbell. That's going to be rough. They're a zone blocking scheme. And so Calais Campbell does relatively well against those type of offensive blocking schemes. So this is just going to be a tough assignment overall. I'm not very optimistic about this game.
Oh, it's going to be rough. I think Campbell is disruptive in there. And how about Fort coming back for Philly? How about another linebacker who the Eagles would love to have on their roster right now? That him coming back there, and Patrick Queen. I mean, we know the Eagles don't draft linebackers very high, but wouldn't he have looked? I mean, you would have had to decide between he and Rager if they wanted to move up, try to get him, stuff like that. But how nice would it be to have a guy like Patrick Queen in the middle of his defense right now for years to come, and you knew what you were getting in that position? I mean, that Ravens defense. It kind of scares me in a way that they're going to attack this offense and the blitzes that they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. It's not an ideal matchup for the Eagles. And on either side of the field, I think, look, if you want to take anything away from this game, hopefully it's the young guys stepping up. But again, it's part of the reason why we want to talk about the wide receivers so much and the offensive line. This matchup is not very good on paper. And I don't mean to sound super negative, but the Ravens are a very good team. And it just kind of, look, last year in training camp, they did joint practices and the Ravens mopped the field with them, in my opinion. And frankly, I just think they're a much more talented team. They're much more well put together. I think Eric DeCosta has done a very good job establishing this team on both sides of the ball. And I don't think Howie Roseman's done the same. So it's going to be a rough matchup. I spoke to Dwayne Walker, the former Browns DB's coach, about, taking Lamar Jackson not out of the game, but defending him. So some plot points he gave me were Jalen Hurts obviously serving as Lamar Jackson in practice, but Walker said he's not as athletic. He doesn't have the arm talent. It's hard to officially replicate Lamar Jackson. He thinks the defensive line needs to not play for sacks, but to play for contain. He called it caging. Where you have the defensive ends kind of try to lock Lamar Jackson into the pocket while the defensive tackles try to take away passing lanes. To me, that's brilliant, and that's what should be happening. It's easier said than done. The linebackers are probably going to have a spy. I'm assuming it's going to be Nathan Gary because he apparently has photos of somebody. But like, look, if it's Duke Riley, either way, the Eagles are not going to be at an advantage there. I just think Lamar Jackson is just too good. It doesn't matter. You could spy him with 6 guys. You could go to the spy museum in Washington, D.C. and bring up every person who works there, and it would not stop Lamar Jackson. I don't even know if that museum's still open, but anyway, I went there when I was like 12. And then look, from a secondary standpoint, look, Mark Andrews, right? Am I like having a brain fart here?
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrews, the dude gets open all the time. He can't block to save his life, but he can get open. And that's going to be a tough task for guys like Kayvon Wallace and Marcus Epps. And perhaps maybe Will Parks, who I think, if he does come back, will be a huge upgrade in that third safety position. I think he's inevitably going to be the starting strong safety. And then at corner, look, Marquise Hollywood Brown is a really tough assignment. He's going to be a guy that they need to shut down the passing game. I don't think that's going to happen. So, again, we got to watch out for Darius Slay, who's in the league's concussion protocol. We're recording this on Thursday morning. So we don't know if he practiced on Thursday or Friday, but Wednesday he was held out. So, Chris, what are your final thoughts today?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Lamar Jackson really is going to be able to, if he's really recovered from that ankle. Because if not, there were some opportunities for some turnovers that Cincinnati just dropped, like flat out dropped. And I think when you look on the flip side, I think Joe Burrow, if Cincinnati had an actual competent offensive line, I think they would have gave the Ravens fit. So I think the game's going to be a lot closer than what people think. I think it's going to be close up to the fourth quarter, but then the Ravens are going to pull away. So I think it's going to be a Ravens win. I think I had it like 28-17 or something like that. But it's going to be I think it's going to be another one of those games where you start to look and go, wow, the Eagles should have won this game. And then the Ravens just broke away from it. It's just the way I think about it. I mean, what are you thinking is your final thought?
I think you and I are on the same page, though. I think this is going to be a blowout. I've got it like 38-20. I just kind of think they're going to start off fast, and maybe the Eagles will show some fight in the second and third quarter, but the Ravens will inevitably pull away. Look, even if they lose this game, the Eagles will be in NFC East contention. They'll maybe be at worst a game and a half back of the Cowboys. And so they'll be able to get back in it because they do have matchups against the Giants and Cowboys in the coming weeks. But man, I'm not saying they should tank. I'm not saying they should do a rebuild in the middle of a season, but I really think it's time to kind of look at your other options. The one positive note for this game, other than Travis Fulgam, obviously, is that fans will be in the stands. That'll be kind of cool. I've seen the TV journalists ask about fans almost 12 times a day, I feel like, in press conferences, and I'm not sure that's an exaggeration or hyperbole. If I get one more of those fan questions, I don't know. But I mean, I do think it's terrific. I think it's great. I think the Eagles will appreciate the support, but hopefully the Eagles prove us wrong and treat those folks who are making their way to the link very, very happy. So make sure, and now that we've gotten through that morbid talk, make sure you sign up for Eagles Extra. You can do that by going to NJ.com/text. You can download the No Huddle Show podcast wherever podcasts are available. For Chris, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you on Sunday.